Hi, this is Phil Kaveny, and I'm back to talk about the creative process. I'm still working on my Boys of Summer project, and I was on the phone with one of my contributors, Bob Akamatsu, who's generously supporting this project, as are some other people who don't want their names mentioned. But I want to talk about some people in my life and thank them, because they've been very helpful in keeping things going and allowing me to have access to a lifetime of creative output. And I just mean that. It all started this way. I'm in conversation often with my blog master and fellow author and Philip of Traer and Thuringer, the officer, about different aspects of the creative process and our sort of mutual desire to thumb our nose at the academic world. And I was watching this show. It's an Australian show about a family that has to relocate because the mother dies in a tragic automobile accident that her husband holds himself to be responsible for, because he distracted her with a kind of a snipey compliment, and she got hit crossing the street. It's sad, but it's got funny parts, because the whole family moves from Australia to New Zealand, which the petulant 16-year-old teenage daughter absolutely hates, and the 14-year-old son doesn't like much better. So I was watching this show, and it's sort of the typical BBC kind of thing, interesting people, different surroundings and stuff. And they were playing D&D, the 14-year-old boy and one of his geeky friends. And then that got me thinking about a story idea. And it got me thinking about a movie that I had seen called Five Graves to Cairo, which I sort of talked with my production staff a little bit about. And the movie, I hardly remembered it, but it was based on a historical way that the Nazis were able to be so militarily successful against against all odds, partially because of their evilness, but partially because they were so amazingly crafty. And the German general that is portrayed in this 1943 movie, when the war is still on, is Erwin Rommel. He's usually portrayed as a good German, because in the end he was forced to commit suicide because of his involvement in a plot to kill Hitler. But in this version of the movie, they play him as a bad Rommel. So they got the fattest, ugliest, most obnoxious German actor they could. That would be Erich von Stroheim. And he plays Rommel. But there's an element in the story that's fascinating, where a French girl is working in North Africa now, where Rommel has his headquarters, and she wants to talk to him about her brother, who was left on the beach at Dunkirk. That's a movie that most of you don't know anything about the historical fact so far. But if you watch this movie, you might, the 1943 movie, when these events were current and alive, you might find it absolutely captivating, because the British had to leave a huge French army to be captured and go into German prison camps. And the daughter is pleading with this fat, obnoxious Rommel to do something to get her brother out of prison. Meanwhile, Rommel has a secret. His secret is, how can he be able to reverse the whole breadth of North Africa with seemingly no supply lines? Well, if you're a gamer, you know what that means. It just means that if somebody controls the air, the water, and has military ability to block the roads, how did the Germans succeed? Well, it turns out that they succeeded because they sent bogus archaeological expeditions into North Africa before the war and filled supplies that were buried in what they called graves. So that's the German secret. And I thought about, well, that's a hell of a good story idea. In a way, it's almost has some elements of Lord of the Rings in it, where there's something that's buried and powerful and gives someone an advantage if they find it. And I thought, well, you could do that with aliens too. You could say, well, you know, they buried the alien spaceship at a particular time, waiting for the right time to activate it and then invade the world. But then my idea was, well, why not write a story like that, like I'm talking about, with the buried artifact by the aliens that have gone through first, sort of like these Germans are portrayed in the movie, but have it be like a pernicious ideology. Now, what do I mean by a pernicious ideology? Well, I mean something like trickle-down capitalism is a pretty good one. Because when I was a young man, we did not think that concentrating the wealth of this country in ever smaller number of hands and allowing rich people to live in isolated communities where they had to contribute nothing to society in general was a good idea. We didn't think, for example, when Milton Friedman, who after the Hurricane Katrina wrote his last editorial for the New York Times before he died, well, wouldn't this be a wonderful time for us to step in and destroy the teachers union and the New Orleans public school system? Because who needs public schools after all? And it goes on and on. The same with public health. There are a lot of programs which are in danger now that were uncontested 40 or 50 years ago. And so what really has to happen is that somehow people have to believe that these bad ideas are good ideas. It's called an ideology. It's a way of people manufacture beliefs to justify, their particular advantage. I mean, one of the best ideas, there was a German sociologist named Max Weber, and he talked about the Protestant Reformation and capitalism. And the idea was that you were part of the elect and God loved you if you were rich. And so if you're rich, God was showing his favor. And if you weren't rich, then I'm sorry, you were just, well, it rhymes with duck and it starts with F and I won't use it on my channel. But there are so many things like that where people don't remember that there was a time when if you had an emergency room call, it didn't cost you thousands of dollars. I remember once I ended up in a situation where we somehow got into a situation with a bunch of professional boxers, and I had to take my friend into the emergency room. If that would have happened now, it would have cost thousands of dollars. When it happened in 1969, nobody got a bill. And that which is to me so strange is idealized as being normal. Like if you fall on the ice, it should cost you $2,000 to get to the hospital if you don't have health insurance, and you better damn well drag yourself in because nobody's going to help you. And I wonder in what sense did we go from a kind of a community, mutually supportive view of neighborhood kind of society to this sort of ruthless dog-eat-dog way of looking at the world. We used to think that education was an investment. Now it becomes a burden to the people that have taken the chance and invested in it. Well, again, I'm developing this as a story idea. And to write this story, I go back to a story that I started 45 years ago, where archaeologists are working on something, trying to figure out how a particular planet, after nearly destroying itself, was able to renounce war. Well, so the story is the old version is being edited. I did my research for the new story. What I want to say is, this is about creating a story. This isn't about writing a story for a grade, for a teacher who won't understand it, and is so far out of date that they just don't get what kids are reading now, young people are reading now. This is about actually making a story and trying to get somebody to buy it or like it or make a human connection with it. And you don't always have to be able to pay for what you create. Sometimes the creative process is the first link into kind of a human interaction that leads to something else. Like a guy I've hired to shovel snow for a friend of mine, also is very interested in tabletop gaming. He has a 13-year-old son, and I'll take him over, I'll have them over here to play one of their games, read some of their stuff, and we'll have a good time. But the idea of having this working, having the body of my work available, and maybe being able to talk to you in a few weeks about a finished product that will be published is really a gas. So that's it for now, and it's a snowy day in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Thanks for listening and watching. If you like my videos, please send a comment. If you want to support me, send a PayPal donation. If you got books to review, I'll look at them and do my best. And this has been a wonderful, spontaneous day with my crew.